Okay.
Okay,
Um,
great. Well, so anyone who's watching this, welcome. This is a little bit of a chat, informal, about how Take the Jump and local authorities can work together to deliver a sustainable change in the six shifts. So I'm going to just take us through kind of like the standard deck that we have that we sort of share with and talk through with local authorities if people are interested in speaking to them. And I think this is really kind of powerful way for for change to happen at the local authority level and for Take the Jump to engage. Because if you think about local authority, many local authorities have these climate change targets, so really sort of committed to making a change in their local area. And if you think about making the six shifts happen, it's okay to think about it in your own life and maybe in your company, and that's really powerful and effective. But if we can get an area or a neighborhood kind of doing that, where there's lots of different people trying it, there's businesses, the local authority from their point of view are trying to encourage it. It kind of helps create a critical mass where you can imagine a place becoming a bit of a window into the future where you can sort of see businesses and shops and community groups doing things around the shifts that make it easier for us in our lives, because obviously a lot of the barriers. I mean, we just did a big survey on what on how people are going with Take the Jump and the challenges that people are facing, and the top three challenges were all around having people to come with me on the journey, being able to talk to the people around me. Basically, the three biggest challenges were other people in our lives. And so, I mean, one way to think about that is that that's a challenge, but also if we can get people around us, like, on board and helping us, it doesn't have to be everyone, but just enough, then that means that we really, that could be a huge way to help change happen. So that's why I think, thinking about taking the jump in a sort of place-based, community-based approach is really powerful, and local authorities are a wonderful way to do that. So I'm going to talk for a little bit about our approach, and then we might hear from our wonderful chums at Kent County Council, who've been doing some wonderful work, and then we'll just have a back and forth, and we'll try and keep it to an hour. So I'm going to try and share my slides now. Let's see if this works. Anyone, everyone see that?
yep,
Wonderful.
that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so this is quite a long document. It's like 40, 50 pages or something. So I'm not going to go for every page. I'm just going to skim through and show you what's in here. But basically, this is what, if you're an ambassador or someone taking the jump and you're thinking, like, I would love it if my local council could hear about this or could get involved. And actually, a lot of the conversations we're having with local authorities, which is, 10 to 15 councils at the moment, really, that's how it starts. It's someone in the local area being like, "Oh, I'm interested in Take the Jump, and I want to talk to my local authority." But the question often we get is, "How do I start? Like, who do I speak to, and what do I say?" Right. So this is part of what we did, of what we can kind of offer and talk about. So in terms of a quick introduction, why is this? Why is it something that's worth talking to local authorities about? Well, and the Kent guys can talk about this in a bit, but I spent a lot of my life working with local authorities and with councils in my previous job at C40, which is a network of cities. And I think there's a big recognition that local authorities often have really ambitious targets. So, for instance, net zero by 2030, 2035. And that means, getting the whole area, either as just the council itself or the whole like the whole resident, the whole borough or district to be net zero. And that involves residents and communities and businesses, and that can often be quite a difficult thing to do, because often if you're a council advising or encouraging residents and communities to reduce their emissions, isn't easy, right? If you think about your own life, like uh imagine the council telling you to eat less meat or to change your diet or to change the way you do things in your own life. That's, it's not always an easy conversation, that. So this is something that councils can often find quite difficult. But, as we've seen from the Take the Jump research, 27% of the change we need, residents and communities can deliver. So this is a massive chunk of the overall reduction trajectory, certainly if you're trying to hit net zero, excuse me, that can be delivered by trying the six shifts. And so we Take the Jump with its quite unique approach, cutting edge behavior change and social science, the joyous, kind of inclusive way we do things can be really helpful for councils who often, and as we know at the moment, you know, council budgets are being reduced. The resources available to councils are slim, and this is a big task. So helping councils with that can be a really positive thing, you know, for councils and you know, for the community. So that's the kind of like the reason this is something that's possible, because councils really need help, and we can offer it. And the way that it, just in a quick summary, you know, the way that we approach this really. So there's various different ways we can work with the council and help. But you know, the kind of what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to outline kind of like a kind of max option for how we can partner with the council. And then within that, there's lots of different steps and stages and elements, but really we can offer any one of those bits as a call out or as a little chunk that depending on what the council needs. But in general, the idea is that we can work with the council to engage, just like we do in our, you know, in our communities and when we work with local groups, engaging local groups, local institutions, local community groups, local cultural institutions, local businesses, with the council to start taking the jump, to start thinking about sustainability in this kind of joyous, no shaming, it's enough just to try kind of way. Starting from the bottom up, looking for community leaders, people who are inspired by this, giving them the support they need, the training, the inspiration, and the hand-holding, so that they can go out, start engaging their community and getting people trying stuff. And you know, I think some of the things that, you know, if we're talking to councils, the things that we sort of pull out that makes this kind of different to a lot of other stuff out there. One is that, you know, what, as I'm going to come on to in a bit, this is kind of really about a long-term change. I mean, for those of you who've done the ambassador training, you know that we've got a 10-year mission to really shift cultures and mindsets across the industrialized world. And so that 10-year project, like this, working with councils, is a real catalyst for that. And we have a real goal of kind of starting a self-sustaining sort of almost movement or momentum in the council area that can then, you know, if we work with the council or in a local area for 18 months or something, then by the end of that, the idea is that there's enough momentum amongst community leaders that this then becomes self-sustaining. You know, that it's very much community led, that we're completely non-political from the, you know, big political. We work with, you know, obviously people on every side of the political spectrum really care about nature. So we're really keen to, you know, engage people wherever. Our unique communication approach, and you know, if we're depending on the way that, you know, on the partnership with the council, we can we have boots on the ground often in different places, like ambassadors, or even depending on the type of partnership, like Take the Jump staff can engage in a really sort of hands-on way in the area. And so this is just actually this section is just about what we've already got going on and the conversations we have. So we have various councils that were in different stages of discussion. That slide's from about 6 months ago, so it's a bit out of date. But we're talking to, you know, Kent. We've just done a big event with Waltham Forest Council, which is funded by Waltham Forest, and the Arts Council UK, where we did a 6-day event in the High Street in Chingford, which was involved loads of different community groups. Chingford's quite an economically disadvantaged area of North London. People don't tend to talk about climate change much there. There's, you know, it's a real area where the cost of living crisis is biting. And we did an event where we took over a big property in the High Street, and we had each day we had a different event for one of the shifts. So we had like a growing workshop for Eat Green Day. We had a clothes swap for Dress Retro. We had a repair shop for End Clutter. We had a big party at the end. And we had, you know, hundreds of people come over the whole time. We had like actors, in a bit of immersive theatre going on. We had some interactive installations. And we had, of the people that came, 40% were completely new to thinking about sustainability, which is like enormously higher than you would normally have for a sustainability event. You know, typically you're talking 5-10% people, if that, who are not already like thinking about sustainability, who would come to an event which is quite which has, you know, nature and the planet as a key theme. So 40% is very high, and then 80% of people who left, of people who came, left feeling much more empowered, much more likely to take action, and much more inspired, and much more positive about the future and about their role and their desire to see change at the system level, at government level, and so on. So that was real clear evidence that this kind of activity when we work with the council, when we work with local authority, local organizations and communities, and put on events, it can be very, very transformative. So that was one example. I'm also talking to lots of other councils like Leeds, Stroud, Watford, Westminster, and a whole bunch of others. So in terms of how this would work then, so typically the take the jump approach overall, the kind of overall theory of change is in 3 main steps. Okay, so unlocking the power of people, step 1, growing a joyous movement of people making a change, step 2, and then changing the paradigm and then the system, step 3. So the first one, unlocking the power of people, this is kind of like a normal campaign, really, which is just reaching as many people as possible, and with our joyous, it's not, no shaming, enough just to try approach and getting people to think about, maybe I'm going to make a change. Okay, I'm going to do it. So the first one is getting as many people as possible to either see the 6 shifts or hear about them, to know about them, have them in their head, so that they're kind of processing away and thinking, okay, this is where I need to be heading. And then that's the first target, kind of reach. And then the second one is as many people as possible to try taking the jump, to try these shifts. Okay, so that's like a normal behavior change campaign, how they normally work, right? Getting people to try and do something differently. But then the second bit, and then 2 and 3 are what really make take the jump. Well, the way we approach 1 makes take the jump very different, because we're not about shaming people, we're not about doom and gloom and just scaring people into change. But then what really helps make us very different is 2 and 3, which is the second is helping people actually make a change, bringing people together into groups, offering training, guides on how to make a change, online forums, places where people can actually be supported through that change, and connecting people so that you start to build momentum. You start to create a pocket of society, an increasingly significant one, where people are actually living this kind of joyous alternative approach to doing things, living a full life while in balance with nature. And then step 3 is using that power. So rather than us going around and telling everybody, hey, this is the way the future needs to be, if step 2 is really that throw a better party. If you want to change the world, throw a better party. Well, 2 is throwing the party, and 3 is kind of handing out the flyers for the parties, telling everybody about the party, making sure everyone hears about it. So using that storytelling potential of people having a great time and kind of transmitting it. Now, this is our approach overall, really, our kind of meta theory of change. Now, when we think about a local authority, the way that we apply that, here's an example now of how we could collaborate with a local authority over 18 months to deploy these steps. Okay, so imagine if we were thinking, we're talking to a local authority in your area, or your a councillor or a local authority officer, and you want to have a chat with them. And these are the sort of the general steps that, in terms of how we'd describe collaborating. So the first is, a couple of months where we'd set up, we'd collaborate with local authorities, talking about how things would work, understanding where their priorities are, getting a list. So we were talking to Watford recently about doing this, and they sent us a list of 150 of the local community groups that are working in green spaces, and where they are and who the key contact is, so that we can reach out to them, start building conversation, like connect, we can have an idea of who the key people are to collaborate with. And then having a period of outreach. So this is where we take that list and we start talking to people. And so, as local ambassadors, engaging with who are the couple of people or organizations locally that we can speak to and talk about Take the Jump and get people excited, and try and basically pull together a little bucket of the people who are most engaged, and kind of entice them in. So that's that first, if you remember that, the first chunk of this theory of change. So that outreach is the first key bit, and that's something that it's quite, in many ways, quite energy intensive, because it's really going out there, having lots of conversations with new people, building trust with community leaders. But it's really it's the kind of way in, and this really does involve, when we've talked, we can maybe go into this if people want, if we have Q&A. There's a whole bunch of elements in that. And things like social media campaigns, press campaigns and stuff are kind of really important to this. But really the bread and butter is people going out, finding and talking to people over coffee, at meetings. Actually face-to-face time is really the kind of the key catalyst for this, because You know, as a lot of our evidence and data has shown, people talking to people and giving a bit of time and listening is by far the most powerful way of activating community leaders. So that's the outreach. And then we have this long period of activation. So imagine you have a couple of people who are, you know, groups, local, you know, church leaders, schools, people in the council who are really activated and want to lead this, getting those guys really trained up and on board, and then supporting them through delivering stuff. So basically, this is where that kind of throwing the party happens. And this doesn't need to involve everyone in a district or in a borough. This is about getting, you know, enough of a sort of distribution of different kind of groups and communities doing events, having a good time, building that storytelling. So trying the shifts, putting on clothes swaps, you know, repair shops, growing events, you know, cycle buses to school, sorry, and then building that kind of like just that experience with it and those positive stories. And then once you get to a certain point, when you've got that kind of storytelling, using that to really engage the wider community. So leaning into local cultural events, local festivals, local, you know, theatre, local art galleries, ways that you can sort of reach then the wider community, and really encouraging those people who've had this positive experience through the activation phase to go out and engage everyone locally, you know, through the sorts of events. And then the idea being that by at the end of 18 months, it's kind of like a self-sustaining thing. So, I mean, if you want to think, imagine where we are on this. So Waltham Forest, that event I talked about just now. So Waltham Forest looked at this and they were like, right, we want to start here at D because we think, you know, they have a really ambitious plan already around consumption and behavior change. And they were like, we want to engage certain communities. So we did this event here, that one I talked about where we had the actors, we had you know, the Throw a Better Party to change the world, Throw a Better Party event. So this went very well, but now they've done this. Now Waltham Forest are thinking, actually, maybe we need to go back here and start these other two because actually, you know, there is real power in that kind of and this has happened naturally through doing this. We've engaged a lot of people in Chingford who are now wanting to start this activation phase, who are now wanting to. So we have a local Turkish football team. We've got a bunch of local schools and local community groups who are now taking the jump and want to engage their community. So you can sort of enter this at any point, but really in the end, you think you end up naturally being drawn to try and do it all. So just to sort of run through some bits of what's involved. Do I need to go through this? I think I may have already spoken through this. Yeah, I think I have actually. What this is. And then here's some examples on typical targets. This is something that's really helpful to talk to councils about. So for each of these phases, and this is something we'll be talking to Kent more about indeed in due course. But like, so for this first phase, a really ambitious target, right? If you imagine to work with the council would be around about 10% of people having taken the jump by the end of 18 months. I mean, that's very ambitious, but you know, it's potentially in certain areas of a borough that might be potentially impossible. 50% of certain types of institutions engaged. So for instance, schools, you could set a target of 50% of schools in a certain area we would have gone to and done some engagement with. And the key thing really of all of this is that that a lot of the people that we're engaging are not the people who are already engaging in environment stuff. So you know, people who are not the usual suspects. And our target for that is 50% of people who, and the way we define that in our measurement is people who do not self-identify as environmentalists. So if you ask someone, are you an environmentalist? You'd be surprised. Most people in the country would put a big fat cross, no, you know, in the UK, because that word environmentalist has great cultural connotation about being, you know, a greenie. But most people would say, yes, but I do really care about nature. So we're trying to reach those people who are not self-identifying as part of the green movement, but do also care about nature and want to see change and are happy to make change themselves. So that's a really important thing that we're trying to track. And then our key targets are that 50% once of those people have taken part, 50% of those people are actually taking you know, after 6 months or whenever they finish their jump, their 50% report continuing momentum. At the moment, our actual number across Take the Jump movement is 68% here, so we're well above our target across the movement. But we want to really be able to demonstrate that in areas that are that not used to taking part in the environment movement. So, for instance, we'll measure that in 6 months in Chingford, and hopefully our number will be at least 50%. And then for the change to paradigm one, our goal will be that at the end of 18 months, at least a quarter of the whole population has in some way engaged with Take the Jump, has seen it, has heard about it, has been to an event, and that we've had at least 5 or 6 sort of events take place. I mean, this is more detail on what's in each of those phases. If we wanted to talk to council about how we'd support that. I'm conscious about time, but maybe I'll just very quickly. In that first phase, so as I mentioned a minute ago, with, for instance, with Watford, co-identifying a list of partners to engage, reaching out to them, activation through talks, and inviting local church groups, or reaching out first and then inviting talks and workshops, doing a Kickstarter campaign with the press and social media, and then really working with the council as well. So getting the council on board and getting particularly the political leadership and then the officers and the different departments on board is super important if you're trying to actually deliver change. I mean, that's the one thing I learned from one of the many things I learned, but probably the biggest one I learned from my time at C40 was that if you don't have, getting that buy-in at the council is absolutely crucial. And so spending the time to do that is key. And then for the phase around actually, getting stuff going in the area, working with local groups. So once you've got, 5, 6, 10 groups going, actually supporting all the way through to the end, providing the toolkits and regular kind of one-on-one check-ins, events, so working with them to do their repair shops and so on, and providing connective spaces, like either physically, so like a local place that people can come meet every month, or online forums where people can connect. And then in terms of putting on the events and reaching out to the wider community, really just amplifying that story through events, through cultural partnerships, and then really important is working with the local area to then bring in more funding and resources to be able to sort of keep the work going once we step back from it. So I'll stop there. I think that's like the kind of the general thing that we sort of talk about to a council. I'm conscious I went right in at the deep end there about what we would offer. But in terms of, if anyone has any questions about from the point of view of an ambassador, what would be, if you're starting out, if that's kind of like, what we our kind of North Star, what I've just went through about, how we love to work with the council and how we can talk about it with the council, and the council could take any of those different bits. If you have any questions around what you would need to be able to start the conversations around, Chris, go for it.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, obviously, sorry, Tom, you know this, everyone else might not. I work with my local transition group. I've worked in schools in and around East London. So I already have some, connections to locally established communities. And in my case, I also know my local councillor. But let's say before the council get on board, and this isn't to deliberately, kind of leave them out, but what do you think to the possibility of engaging some of, let's say, my local community groups and things, and say, what do you guys think of this? And therefore get their support, so that when I approach the councillor, I can say, oh, I've spoken to, this school, that school, that school, and they seem quite keen to take the jump. So what do you say, or sorry, and then present it in whatever manner you feel.
So is your question, does it make sense to, before we talk to, for instance, if we were in where you are, Waltham Forest, like before we talk to the council, to build a bit of momentum locally with local community groups, local people?
Yeah, I mean, obviously in my case particularly, but I mean, because I've already got what I have. But if I were to do it in a different area, there are surrounding boroughs, and to be able to say, we're already working with groups in your area, and we'd like to try and get the council on board, or however you would word it.
I mean, I think basically everywhere where we've kind of been successful in engaging with local authorities, I think that's really key. Is like it's a local person or a local community group who's already trying it, and is quite inspired, and then I think, I mean, the Kent guys can talk about this in a bit, but I think if you're a council and someone in your, you know, a community group in your area is really excited and comes to talk to you, it means a lot more, you know. As you can see, oh, people are already engaging with this. So I think definitely the first step is probably, you know, to develop some sort of activity on the ground first. But I don't think necessarily. I mean, if you're on your own, because I think there are other areas where I know that Lisa, who's not on the call, but she's active in Worcester. She doesn't have many other people taking the jump there, but she's been quite successful in engaging the council there to you know, to have conversations, and you know, that's an ongoing discussion. So I think you don't necessarily need it. You can, but if it's definitely helpful. I hope, I don't know if that was specific, if that was.
Yeah. I mean, sorry if I missed something, but I wasn't clear whether you were saying for whatever reason it's often best to start with the council and then go to local groups, or in some cases it's best to have a little bit of local support because that gives you that little initial momentum where the council are like, well, if locals are already in, then that's great. You know, let's just keep going.
No, I think, yeah, I think basically I think it comes down to it's different. Yeah, I think as we were saying, the ambassador training, it's like wherever people feel inspired to sort of take it, and if someone has a connection with the local council and wants to go and have that conversation, then great. But if they want to, you know, if they have a local community group they want to engage with first, then great. So I think it's kind of a bit different. There's not really like a fixed sort of hierarchy of order, if you know what I mean. It's whatever people feel inspired to do.
A couple more questions, Louise and then Pat.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, my question is, when you're approaching councils, what do we ask from them? So do we ask anything, or is that even go near that question until later?
Yeah.
Or what do we need from them? Do we ask for funding, or is that a bit of a sensitive subject? And is it possible to do these projects without any funding from them? Or
so this is a good question, and I suppose the reason I've kind of left it quite open-ended is because it is open-ended, and like, so for instance, we have very different conversations with different councils, and so what we have to do is we sort of present this offering to a council, and then there's different types of feedback. So some councils have money but no staff, some councils have staff but no money, some councils have lots of volunteer. So for instance, Stroud have a massive volunteer group who are their community engagement sort of network, and they're really just looking for something to do, but they didn't have the right, well, they didn't have a framework to work with, and then we engage with Stroud, and then they pass us on to their engagement group, and now they're going to run a campaign called I'm a Hypocrite, but so as in you know, I'm a hypocrite. They're going to show what it is they're not doing right, and then what, you know what I mean, not doing right, but what their guilty kind of climate pleasure, you know, someone eating a steak or something, and then, but I haven't bought any new clothes in 2 years, and as a way of, you know, a local campaign online where people are showing it's okay not to be perfect, right? That's partly with the council, but also using lots of local people's existing energy. With Watford, we're talking about, you know, a full funded campaign, like project collaboration, you know, where they would so to an extent, I think if you're thinking, there's quite a lot we can do that doesn't involve any resources. You know, training staff, working, you know, running some workshops at the council. But so there's a lot we can do without any resources. But if it's quite a sort of, you know, the sort of program I described just now, which is kind of why we sort of start with that, because that's like the, you know, the sort of the sort of bigger ask, as it were. And then often you hear council be like, oh, well, we can't really afford that, but maybe we can do this bit. So I think it really comes out of the conversation, but yeah, it depends on the council, I guess, which is
yeah. But is it okay to ask for funding? I mean, that's not something that they would sort of like take offence at, or you just sort of, is it something that you just bring in further down the line when you've got a relationship, so you don't look like you're going in there asking for loads of money?
In my experience, you should always ask for funding if you need it, and then but be open that, you know, as in you make the case for what we can do with funding, but also, you know, just be honest about that, and also be open to, you know, support otherwise. I mean, I'd love to invite Ken. What would you say if, you know, on that question?
Well, I think it comes back to what you were saying about different councils are in different positions. And I think in Kent, we're a county council. We have a team around us. So we're in a position where we have a bit more staffing resource, but we have absolutely no budget for this. We have to look externally for funding. So we're doing what we can, as we'll explain in a bit, internally to start off with, to build those connections and support and opportunities, and then hopefully find some funding, find some partnerships where we can take it forward externally. But yeah, so if someone approached us asking for funding, we wouldn't be able to do that, but we'd always offer to work in partnership with community groups or that to sort of build on what they're doing.
Yeah, you wouldn't be offended if someone did ask for funding. You'd just be like, no, like we don't have it, right?
We're very used to being asked for funding. There used to be days when we had funding. So yeah, we understand. We still get a lot of requests. It's not offensive at all. It's just the way of the world now.
Yeah.
And I quickly ask another question, Tom, which is in terms of like the best person to approach, because I approached the sustainability and she got back to me very positively, CCing somebody else who I think was the climate lead. And now I'm talking to both of them. They've gone off the boil. And I think it's that situation where, when you've got two people, they both think it's the other person's. Sometimes that happens. You see somebody, and then neither of them get back to you because they're both sort of thinking it's the other person who should be doing it. And like situation. So out of those two, who is the person to sort of really persevere with? I don't really know anything about the structure of councils and the different roles and who I need to be concentrating on.
Do you want me to come in there? It's going to be different for different councils, I'm afraid, Louise. We're all a bit of a different bag in different places. So again, like we're talking at a county level, we've got a team. So the smaller councils, like the lower tier councils, districts and boroughs, it might be one officer who's your climate change officer or sustainability officer, and their workload will be insane, but they may have some funding but not the personnel to support it. But what I've sort of put in my presentation really is you've got to try lots of different departments, because that's what we're finding as we're starting to work on this, that there might be opportunities, for example, with our libraries colleagues, with just we'll list them in a bit, but loads of different departments. We've all got kind of shared goals that we're working towards, and so by kind of getting in touch with different people, you'll see what they can offer. It might be funding, it might be resource, it might be access to a different group of people.
Yeah, and just, I mean, absolutely. I think not every council is the same, as Laura said, and some councils are just not in a place to be able to engage with this. So I think you can have the conversation, and if it's not positive feedback isn't there, that's okay. It's not like anyone's failed or anything. It's just not every council's always in a place to work with this. But I think, as Laura said, trying as many different people in the council can be really helpful. And if you can, finding the person who makes the decision around the environment stuff is really, really helpful. And it's not always obvious who that is, but it could take a bit of time. Anyway, I'm conscious we should probably get on to Kent, but Pat. I
was just going to say that I can share my experience of contacting my local district council if that's useful. I don't have a Take the Jump group going, but what I did instead was the council has a system whereby residents can give a short presentation at an environment advisory group, which is designed to advise the district councillor. So I gave a talk about what I had already done, and I referenced Take the Jump in that. And that means I've now got an ongoing communication with the officers and with the district council. So I guess it's kind of an answer to Chris's question. Do you get the group going first, or do you contact the council? And I think you do both, and whichever one looks like it's going to work, then you just go with that. So that's my experience.
Thank you, Pat. Put far more eloquently than I did. Thank you so much. Thank you. No, whichever works, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, Kent, maybe we should hand over to you guys.
Yeah, sure. Let me see about sharing my screen. Has that come up for you?
Not yet, no. Just make sure you've got permissions. Is it saying it's okay to share? You are co-host.
Oh,
There we
here we go.
Yeah.
That's working.
Brilliant.
You're off.
How's that?
Woohoo! Look at that.
Brilliant. So, we've just got a couple of introductions, just so you know who we are within our local authority. Obviously, you know us as ambassadors. Joe is also in our team, so we'll talk about Joe too, but he hasn't done the ambassador training. So Laura, Joe and I work in the engagement and communications team, and that works across the environment and circular economy division. So my main work is on engaging schools and young people on the environment and sustainability, and that's to encourage widespread community behaviour change. Juliana's role focuses on decarbonisation of community buildings, and then Laura leads on our insight and behaviour change campaigns and our environmental engagement work across the county. So Joe, who's not with us this evening, he runs our social media campaigns. He leads our internal environmental champions network and supports with our county-wide insight and behaviour change campaigns. He also leads on carbon literacy and IEMA training, Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. So just a few introductions. And when I talk about the environment and circular economy division, it's quite wide ranging. So there's energy and climate change, obviously working towards our net zero targets, but also flood and water management. In the natural environment, the country parks, Plan Tree, Plan B. We have a Making Space for Nature team who are looking at our local nature recovery strategy and the biodiversity net gain strategy. And then resource management as KCC, Kent County Council, are the lead waste disposal authority for Kent. So we also manage the household waste recycling centres and other key waste strategies for the county. Within the resource management team, there's also a small circular economy team. And within our division, we have heritage conservation. So quite a wide ranging division. So you'll see at the top we have Greener Kent. That was our recently launched campaign to inspire everyone to do what they can to protect and enhance our woodlands and chalk streams, wildflower meadows, coastline, and all of our other natural gems that we treasure, so that our communities can thrive in balance with nature. And we share ideas and inspiration for taking action to support our environment, as well as local events that residents might be interested in. We have social channels on Facebook and X. So that's our kind of our campaign with residents. With Take the Jump, so we started off by having an initial introductory meeting with Tom, just to understand a bit more about the campaign and how it could potentially work with local authorities. So we really loved the campaign, but didn't have any funding, like Laura described. And so we thought we would see how we could grow it and test it internally within KCC. So the three of us joined the ambassador training in March and April. So Juliana, Laura and myself. And then we started off by sharing the campaign with our environmental champions. So these are a group of colleagues who are not necessarily working within the environment division, so working across maybe in adult social care or with children and young people, infrastructure, all kinds of different departments. And so they are already interested or engaged in this area. So we invited them along to see if anyone would like to come along for our first live workshop, which we held in April. So we've got a little photo there of our first workshop. And then we had some really enjoyable conversations from this workshop, really good conversations that we learned lots from, and had amazing feedback. I don't know, I have got a video, it's 2 minutes long. I'm going to see if it's going to work. If it doesn't, then I'll just skip on to the next slide. But this was feedback from one of our first workshops. So let's see.
Don't think we can hear it.
Can you hear that?
I can't. Did you click the share sound button when you did the share screen?
I started it. Could you hear her talking? Sorry,
I couldn't. No.
you couldn't hear it. Okay. Let me just go back to the
We can see the subtitles there.
presentation.
Oh, yeah, I
You can
the
see,
subtitles.
okay, I'll read the subtitles.
Wow, that was wonderful.
I thought you might like that.
Who was that? Sorry.
So that's Natalie. She's from the Active Kent and Medway team.
Wow.
So yeah, really good.
Wonderful. Oh, I mean, please share that with us. That was wonderful.
Yeah,
Really
yeah,
lovely.
definitely will do. So actually, that video was created by our internal comms team for the whole of KCC. So that went out onto our internal, so our internet pages. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh wow. She's great.
So we also, within our environmental champions teams channel, so we set up a separate jumps channel within it, just so that champions could share what actions they're taking, different ideas that have come along, and that have been sharing about which toilet rolls they buy, photos of wardrobe clear outs, and different vegan recommendations. So just going to hand over to Juliana, who's just going to talk a bit about some of the events that we've held internally.
Thanks, Susie. Yeah, I love that video too, Tom. When I saw it from Natalie, I was so excited. So I'm glad we're getting the message right. So the first event that we ran, oh yeah, that was April. It was around Travel Fresh, and we invited quite a few teams to that event. to help us run it and provide information to colleagues. So we set up a little stall downstairs in our kind of cafe area, and we had a bike fixing man with his van come in and do free bike fixes for everyone who brought their bikes in. I hadn't had one done on mine for like months, so that was great. We had Active Travel team, Active Kent and Medway, which is Natalie's team. We had another team called Explore Kent, and obviously our climate change and energy teams were there. You can't see in that picture, but one of our colleagues has a Take the Jump spinner. So we got people to spin a wheel and it would land on a jump, and we'll talk about the jumps. And then we also, at the top left picture there, we also had a e-bike training, which was really fun, and that's something that can be provided to anyone in KCC. So we talked about that during that day as well. Next one, Eat Green. That was in May. So just to point out, these events that we've been running, we've been pigging back onto kind of team division events days. Sorry. So around once a month, we get the whole division kind of in one area of the office. So we thought pigging back onto these days would mean that we could get more people involved, and that's worked quite well so far. So the second one we ran was Eat Green, and lots of people in our team brought vegan treats, and that was a hit with everyone. We were just handing out vegan treats, and people were really surprised at just how many things you can make without dairy or eggs, and there were some really, really lovely treats. I think Susie's won. It was a rocky road and everyone loved Susie's. So yeah, we were just sharing information about food emissions, having some lovely conversations around the kitchen area. This one we decided to run it in the kitchen rather than downstairs in the cafe because there's more footfall, and we found that in the first one we were kind of almost running after people to speak to them, and in this kitchen area people just naturally go there to make their teas and coffee, so it's easier to just naturally talk to people. So that worked really well. So we thought for the next one we ran it in the same place. This was actually this week on Monday, and it was all about holiday local. We printed out, I created these UK holiday postcards, which you can see in that picture there, where people could share their favorite UK holiday destination, how to get there, and things to do. And I initially only printed out, I think, about 15 of those postcards, and they ran out so quick. People were so keen to share, so I had to print out more. And we had about 37 people fill in those postcards. So I can share that template with you guys if you'd be interested in having them. I actually have them here.
Sure.
There's so many of them.
We should definitely do that. We should make these available to everyone.
Yes, it was really a really good way to get a conversation started as well. And then we just lay them all out on the table, and people were actually picking them up and reading, and then just sharing tips. So it was really, really lovely. And our colleague Alison created a playlist with Take the Jump themed songs, or like UK holiday themed songs, which was fun. And then we also had a video in that laptop on the table showing some destinations in the UK. So that was really fun. And we spoke to about 40 people there, I think. Next slide, please.
Sorry, there was also the lunchtime webinar.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not looking at my notes, you see. Yes, after we wrapped up that stall, we had a webinar with our environmental champions where Visit Kent, who is kind of like a tourism organization for Kent. They came on and spoke about different schemes that they have going on, and we had, I think, about 50 people join that call. So that was a nice follow on from the stall. And then about sharing the message and getting the word out there, we've gone with as many channels as possible. So we've been talking to environmental champions through Teams, but also we had a bite-sized session. So these bite-sized sessions happen about once a month. Am I right? I think once a month. And sorry if you can hear my dog barking, going crazy outside. So this is just an online session where we ran, I think it was an hour workshop, 45 minutes actually, and we were a bit nervous on how we would be able to run the workshop in 45 minutes, but actually worked really, really well. We did some polls asking people what jumps they thought would be the hardest and the easiest, and I think there was 114 people in that session. And then we also did a 15-minute introduction in another team meeting for infrastructure, our infrastructure colleagues. They invited us along because one of their someone in their team is an environmental champion, so they'd heard about Take the Jump through there, and they invited us. Chris, I think you have a question. If you want to jump in before it goes, you're on mute.
Sorry. One of them, and the Clutters on 42 and Holiday Locals on 3. And then, you know, they kind of swap places. Was there an event that was relevant to that theme, or was it just, that's just the way from one to the other?
Are you talking about the polls there and that?
Yeah, the polls.
Yeah. So that was during the bite-sized session that I was just mentioning. So we ran we ran just a smaller version of the workshop, and then we asked the colleagues. There was about 114 colleagues, and that those ones were just, and clutter people thought would be the easiest to do, and then holiday local people thought would be the most difficult to do in that call specifically.
Sorry,
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. And then we've also sent some information via different newsletters for all staff newsletters or division newsletters, and shared some challenges and some pictures from past events. So yeah.
Wonderful stuff, guys.
So over to Laura. She's just going to talk through a bit about some of our focuses and what we've learned from our work so far.
Yeah, I'm here to quickly wrap up really, aren't I? But basically, when we've been talking to our staff, we've been trying to encourage them to think about how they can change the system. So although we're talking about individuals not being powerless to act and, you know, be part of a movement, we're also trying to encourage staff to consider that their biggest influence may be the fact that they're part of this huge organisation that is KCC. So it kind of comes back to why local authorities are such a key partner here, because we're involved in so many different services. It's like £1.2 billion of spending money through from KCC each year. So, you know, there's so much potential there to have an impact. So we're really encouraging our staff to start questioning the impacts of their work and consider where there might be other opportunities. And basically just having all these chances to talk to different teams across KCC is just opening up doors for possibilities and working together across departments on this, which is fantastic to have that visibility and those connections with more people. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to carry on doing more internally. It's building momentum, I think, because we are hitting so many different channels, different meetings. We're seeing each event is getting more people along to it, more people engaged, better conversations, and as I say, like more opportunities are arising to work with different departments and make connections that we haven't made before. So we've got a list of future events that are coming up internally, but we're also starting to look beyond KCC now. We've got 12 borough and district councils that we have really strong relationships with. And as I sort of alluded to before, we've got like a bit more in terms of a team resource in KCC. They've got one individual as often as climate officers, but may have some money that they could, you know, we could pull together across the whole of the county. We've also got 321 parish councils, which is insane, isn't it? So many people there, and you know, we get a lot of interest from parish councils on external events that we run and that, and then when you start to think about it, it's the libraries, it's the schools, it's all the community groups that we work with, and sports clubs. And you know, we had Natalie from Active Kent and Medway, which are like a sports development arm of KCC. They do a lot of community development as well. So this is why I think it comes back to, you know, getting in touch with your local authorities, and maybe the first bit of contact with a sustainability officer might not come to much. They're often very overworked, but they can put you in touch with so many different partnerships and make connections within the local authority to wider services. So just my final slide, please. So I feel like we've learned loads from what we've been doing, and if there's any advice I could give to you all about like how to make contact with your councils and that, this would be it. So the first one is piggybacking, which is what we've kind of been talking about before, but you know, you're finding those networks that are already in action, and partnerships are like quite a strong forum to go into and offer to give a presentation about Take the Jump, introduce those kind of forums to the actual campaign itself, because the campaign is so bold and inspiring, and you know, the motivation is already there in so many different people, but and services that we run. They're just not sure of the framework, as Tom was talking about before. You know, you've got to make it, you've got to give them something a little bit easier that they can run with, and examples of where they could actually make this work. So piggyback on everything that you can, and I think it was, how was it? Sorry, I can't see you now. But you were talking about an environmental forum, and there's so many of those in like your district or borough council. There will undoubtedly be different fora where there are councillors, there are council officers there that you could go and speak to. So great place to start. And give it, oh, I've done it in a different order now. I was saying just open doors really is the next one. So push on loads of doors, get in touch with loads of different people, and then push on those open ones, the people that are willing, and just start it there. Just, you know, make a connection, offer to have a talk somewhere, and the more you do that, then the more connections you will make, and it will grow and grow. And so yeah, just get started, get talking to people about it. And certainly what we've learned is like giving it a bit of time, keep going at it, lots of energy, because that's what the campaign's all about, and like making it desirable and attractive for people to actually want to be involved. And cakes work really, really well.
Time, energy, and cakes. That should be our new motto.
I think that's all I need to say.
Oh, guys, thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful, really. I mean, we're definitely going to have to write this up. Your 4 points at the end there, that was absolutely wonderful. Has anyone got any questions for the Kent guys? They've obviously nailed everything. I mean, well, just one more time then, a massive thank you to you guys for this. It's so inspiring, and really, really powerful to hear how it is from your side, and what, you know, what's compelling about it, and then also what, you know, what you guys need, and in terms of what works from the point of view of the council. Maybe just from the point of view of the recording, I'll just wrap up really quickly by saying that what we're going to do very shortly with this recording, when we share it, we'll record we'll provide a folder, a Google folder that everyone can access, which will have a standard email format that you can send to your local council member or council officer. That's a sort of basic format for an introductory email that you can then take and change. With some of these tips, we're definitely going to pull out a lot of the stuff that the wonderful Kent folks said there, and you know, particularly that you know, there's 4 points at the end. and also other things like this slide deck and so on, and what we can offer. So if you're watching this online, then that will be hopefully with you when you see this. And also, obviously, if you've got any other questions, get in touch with us. Either if via WhatsApp, or even just by team@takethejump.org, which is our email. So thanks everyone, and yeah, definitely we encourage everyone to speak to their councils as much as possible. As Laura said, knock on every door. Eventually you'll find one that's open, and then hopefully we'll have a future that's full of joy and less stuff.